Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome to the Tear Talk Bible Study. So glad to have you join me on today. So I know that those of you who have been following, we started this whole Bible story or Bible study, I should say, with the concept that we need to shed more. Um, and as I've talked about different topics within that scope, I've actually kind of moved us into um, really looking at the life of Jesus. And the reason why I'm doing this is the last teaching I believe I did, um, and I've actually mentioned this verse multiple times, which is Romans 12:2 about be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I've really been stuck on the word conform. And there are a lot of things that we have conformed to, sometimes unknowingly. But in order for us to shed more, we have to become aware of what we've conformed to. And some of these concepts, ideas, belief systems, structures, ideologies, ways of doing things really don't line up with the Word of God. They really don't line up with how Jesus lived. They really don't line up with us being image and likeness in the earth. And over the past few weeks, I've had some really hard conversations with people regarding leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm not just speaking of those who may be leaders over a church, because some people's leadership, they have ministries outside of the church. Some people are mentors and coaches. So when I say leadership, it includes all of that. And some of us have conformed to methods and ways and systems and personalities that really don't reflect, look like, sound like, sometimes don't even seem like they have anything to do with God. And I just want to be able to share with all of us, myself included, as I'm reading from this perspective of what we should be looking for. Um, and for some of us, it'll be like, you know what, I never thought of that because a lot of times we can really be enamored by giftings, the operation of giftings, the celebrityism that comes with some people in their gift, to where we pay so much attention to the gift that we don't look at the character. We don't look at what that reflects. Does that look like Jesus? And sometimes, sadly, we don't even care. But I want to at least cause us to all consider. That's my purpose of these Bible studies, is to cause you to at least consider something else. And while I've been meditating on this one particular passage, I have a couple that I'm going to come from, but one of them kind of stood out to me differently. It's one that I have taught from extensively before, but as I was thinking of teaching from, us looking at how Jesus did things, I kind of saw this one in a way I had not seen it before. So I am going to share with you. We're actually going to be talking about the story of the woman at the well, and that is found in John chapter 4. And I want you all to see this from a fresh perspective. So most of you know, in this particular passage, at the beginning of the verse, Jesus says, I must needs go through Samaria. So he goes there and in some versions say it is necessary, it's verse 4. It is necessary for me to go through Samaria. So he gets to this well, right? And it was the middle of the day. So for the most part, no one should have been coming because just historically, women would all go to the well together and they would all go in the morning, because first of all, it was cooler and they did things in community. So when he gets to the well, there's actually a woman there by herself at a time that is probably the hottest. So that leads us to know that for some reason this woman is an outcast, and she's not able to be a part of the community of women for whatever reason that we are not aware of. So Jesus, and then secondly, Jesus is a Jew and she is a Samaritan, and those two cultures never communicated with each other. So for Jesus to even engage her in conversation was like breaking all types of protocol. And she knew it. And it was actually quite shocking to her. So we can start. Let's see where I want to start. Okay, let's see here. So it starts with Jesus when he sits at the well in verse 6, and the woman comes to draw. um, Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." And that's significant because, again, not only is he talking to her, he's asking her for something that will benefit him. So, all of this is so out of the lane of anything she's probably ever experienced in her life. And her response to him is, how is it you, being a Jew, asked me, a Samaritan and a woman? So she had a cultural thing going on, and she had a gender thing going on. He crossing like all barriers in this conversation. For the Jews have nothing to do with Samaritans. In verse 10, Jesus answered her, "If only you knew and recognized God's gift and who this is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him instead, and he would have given you living water." So now, not only did he ask her for something, now he is fully engaging her in a conversation. He didn't ignore her. He didn't disrespect her. He spoke with her. He engaged, he asked her for something and then continued to engage her in conversation. And then, she starts talking more. She starts talking about this particular well because it's Jacob's well. So she has an understanding of her culture, of her history, as she's sharing this with him. And they're having a full-fledged conversation. There is no one else around, which makes this even more of a powerful um, situation that's taking place, because he's talking to her, just the two of them. So all of this is a fresh and a new experience, and they're both breaking barriers because she's also continuing to engage in the conversation with him. But what I want to get to is this, because, okay, let me just get there. Um, so he starts telling her about living water, and she's like, "How can you draw? You don't even have nothing to draw with." I mean, her questions, everything she's saying is legit, and reasonable. But she gets to a point in verse 15, because he talks about everlasting life. Because he talks about how, let me just read it. This is Jesus. He said, "But whosoever drinketh the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life." So this is something she has never heard. Like, you can drink one time and be full for the rest of your life? Like, what? So of course she's like, in verse 15, the woman saith unto him, "Sir, give me this water that I thirst not." So she like, "I don't have to thirst again, and I don't have to come and draw no more water. Yeah, let me tell me how I can get this." But this is the part that I want us to consider in a fresh new way. In verse 16, Jesus said unto her, "Go call your husband to come." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said, let me read it in the Amplified Version. "You have spoken truly in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with is not your husband. In this you have spoken truly." Now, I want us to really look at that passage, because a lot of times when people preach, teach, or write about this woman at the well and the fact that she had 5 husbands, we have always treated that as a bad thing and a place of shame for her. We have always done that. But if we look at verse 19, the woman said to him, "Sir, I see and understand that you are a prophet." Her response does not reflect that her circumstances, from her perspective, was shameful. Let me say that again. Her response does not reflect that her circumstances were shameful. Her response reflects that she realizes that Jesus is something more than just a regular person. Because she then goes on to say, I understand that you are a prophet. So, one thing that I want to say with this is the information that Jesus shared with this woman did not shame her. The information that Jesus disclosed to her, it brought intrigue and curiosity to her, because it further goes on to say, verse 19, the woman said to him, "Sir, I see and understand that you're a prophet. Our forefathers worshipped on this mountain." But so she knew he was a prophet. She didn't see what he said as shameful. And I think that is so significant, because Jesus did not shame her. And God does not shame us. And the prophetic should not be something that brings shame. It brought curiosity and it brought intrigue. And the reason why we know it was nothing negative in that conversation at all is because of verse 28. Then the woman left her water pot and went away to the town, and she began telling the people, "Come, see a man who has told me everything that I ever did. Can this and is this not the Christ? Must not this be the Messiah, the anointed one?" A shame-based conversation would not have brought a response that was so powerful and so life-changing, to where everyone from the town, the men and the women, came to see Jesus and begged him to stay. Think about that. We have read this text with a negative context concerning the woman. And I think that needs to be corrected, because it can paint a picture that when it comes to speaking into the lives of people, when it comes to speaking the heart and the mind of God, it's okay to speak and say something that may be shameful. Jesus did not shame this woman. How, for whatever reason, however it came across to her, it was not shameful. It was so powerful that it intrigued her. It did not hurt her. It did not disrespect her. It did not disregard her. It activated something in her to where it clicked. You got to be a prophet. See, the heart and any expression of God is always through the lens and the length of love. And that love that was expressed to her was so deep that she had to run, even though it was clear she came to the well, possibly from a place of shame. His interaction with her was not shameful. And unfortunately, I have been hearing more and more about people being shamed through preaching, people being shamed in mentorship, people being shamed through teaching, people being shamed in a community, people being shamed through the prophetic. I need y'all to look at this just like I'm looking at this. And this woman's response was from a place of love. She was so full from her conversation, it did such a work in her. She could not keep it to herself. Love does not shame. And if you are finding yourself in these types of environments, under these types of leaderships, under these types of mentorships or um, communities, you might want to ask yourself a question. Does that reflect the heart and the mind of God? Because what you have to consider is every person that Jesus encountered, he knew everything about them. But even when he conversed with them, he never shamed them. So, how is it we have humanity who sees in part and knows in part? You mean to tell me the main thing you're going to focus on is the thing that's going to hurt the person? Is the thing that's going to damage the person? Is the thing that's going to dishonor the person? Really? Of all the things that God can tell you about somebody, that's what he tells you? Really? And he's okay when he functioned never doing that to anybody, never shamed anybody? We got to start, listen, again, we have conformed to some things that don't reflect who he is and how he works and that he loves. Listen to this. Listen. This is how we know what he did was so strong. Let's look at, let me read this all the way through. Again, we're in John 4, and we're going to look at verse 28. It says, Then the woman left her water jar and went away to the town, and she began telling the people, Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Can this be, is not this the Christ? So the people left the town and set out to go to him. Now, let me ask you a question. If you've ever been shamed, if you've ever been disrespected, if you've ever been dishonored, if you've ever been disgraced, is this your response? And if it is your response, do you think that type of response will bring a whole town to come and see him? You will have a whole nother posture, a whole nother attitude, a whole nother type of voice. She didn't have that. She had a joy. She had an excitement. She had a fire. She had a zeal. And it had to be strong because it not only convinced the women, it convinced the men. And you have to understand historically, there was definitely a hierarchy when it came to women and men. Like men during those times, women, for men during those times, women's voices did not carry a lot of weight. They did not carry a lot of influence, not all of them, but the majority. So for a woman, and we don't even know if all the 5 husbands were from that particular place, they might have been. But for a woman who probably for years did things as an outcast, for her to come back so full that it convinced them to not only listen to her, because they definitely could have just ignored her altogether. Her conviction was so strong that they were, first of all, able to listen. And not only did they listen, they responded because they went to go and hear him for themselves. And then hold on. Let me finish this verse because I know this story. They asked him to stay for 2 days. He stayed for 2 days. Let me read it. Verse 39. It says, Now numerous Samaritans from that town believed in and trusted in him because of what the woman said when she declared and testified. In reading this, it is very clear that there was no shame. In reading this, it is very clear that there was no dishonor. In reading this, their response is very clear. There was no disrespect. Let me keep going. Let me reread it. This again is John 4, verse 39. Now, numerous Samaritans from the town believed in and trusted in him because of what the woman said. When she declared and testified, he told me everything that I ever did. So when this, verse 40, so when the Samaritans arrived, they asked him to remain with them, and he did stay there for 2 days. Think about how we have characterized, and I'm guilty myself, on how we have negatively characterized God's or Jesus telling the woman she had 5 husbands. We have never seen that from a place of curiosity, and or that the response of him saying that brought curiosity and intrigue. We've just, because for us, we feel as though that's wrong for a woman to have had 5 husbands, and the one that she's with is not her husband. But for whatever reason, since we are not from that day and time, and we don't have full context of her life story, it did not shame her. And I looked up in the Greek what the word shame means. And shame means disgrace, dishonor, reproach, revile. You don't get any of that from her conversation with Jesus or her response. Now, the Webster's Dictionary says shame is a condition of humiliating, and it also means disgrace. Not the total, but clearly an opposite of what love is, who love is, and what love does. And some of us may be comfortable with places of humiliation, with places of disgrace, with places of dishonor, because we may have experienced it growing up in different spheres. So it's something that we can be common with. It's something that we could have conformed to, just because we may have seen it, witnessed it, participated in it, it was normalized. But when it comes to the things of God, when it comes to the house of God, this is not a norm, and this is not okay. This is not something that we conform to. If it does not have love, let me go to 1 Corinthians. Let me get my Bible right here. Let me go to 1 Corinthians. Oh, I'm in second. I couldn't find it. Got my Bible. Got my Bible. Got my Bible right here. I want you to look at this. And I'm going to read 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians verse 13. And I don't think that we lay this on enough stuff to really help us in our decision. Again, I'm talking about any form of leadership. And in some cases, for some people, relationship that you need to be looking at. Verse 13, I'm going to read in the Amplified Version. Y'all know that's my favorite. If I can speak in the tongues of men and even angels, but have not love, that reasoning, intentional, spiritual devotion, such as is inspired by God's love for us and in us, I am only a noisy gong and a clangling cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers, the gift of interpreting the divine will and purpose, and understand all the secret truths and mysteries and possess all knowledge, and if I have sufficient faith so that I can remove mountains, but have not love, God's love in me, I am nothing. Even if I dole out all that I have to the power in providing food, and if I surrender my body to be burned, or in order that I may glory, but have not love, God's love in me, I gain nothing. Love endures long and is patient and kind. Love never is envious, nor boils over into jealousy, is not boastful or vainglorious, does not display itself haughtily. It is not conceited, arrogant, and inflated with pride. It is not rude, unmannerly, and it does not act unbecomingly. Love, God's love in us, does not insist on its own rights or its own way, for it is not self seeking, it is not touchy or fretful or resentful, it takes no account of the evil done to it, it pays no attention to a suffered wrong, it does not rejoice in injustice and unrighteousness, but rejoices when right and truth prevail. Love bears up under anything and everything that comes, is ever ready to believe the best of every person. Its hopes are fadeless under all circumstances, and it endures everything without weakening. Love never fails, never fades out or becomes obsolete or comes to an end. Love does not shame. This might be heavy for some of you to really consider and to really ponder on. But we really got to ask ourselves, what is the lens and the picture of love that we are looking at and that we are reflecting? Is it the love that is humanistic, or is it the love that is given to us from God Himself? When that woman met Jesus, despite her past, when He spoke to her, He did not shame her. His truth, His revelation of her situation did not disrespect or dishonor her. So begin to consider, when you hear certain things, what lens and what type of love is this? What's love got to do with it? Everything. Especially when you consider His love, the power of it, the magnitude of it, what it does in us and through us when expressed. From Him to us, from us to others. And when it's not reflective of the way I just read it in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, you might want to consider some things. And I'm going to say it as I close. Love, true love, God's love does not shame. You all be blessed, and I'll see you soon.